Hello, this is Anna from Craft Me a Card, and I love crafting for the crafter, and that is you. I'm just showing here some of the cards that we have created these last 2 weeks, and we will be moving forward this week with other cards. Since we tried the ink and then embossing the paper, the photo paper, I want to try this week first embossing it, then inking it up. I bought this beautiful 3D embossing folder. I got this one on Amazon, and I've been hearing a lot of hype on these embossing folders that are 3D. To do these techniques, you do not need a 3D embossing folder. I'm going to be comparing it against this Darice regular embossing folder. Now, I do notice the difference between the 3D and a regular embossing folder. An embossing folder, I have found that is just one layer of embossed image, versus the 3D has more layers to it. If you could see here to your right, you see that a leaf has more than just one flat layer on it. It has different layers to it. So that is the difference between a regular embossing folder and a 3D embossing folder. Needless to say, they are both beautiful and they both do the job that we want, which is to give it that different texture to our projects. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to take on here is the 3D, and I'm just going to put some Speckled Egg Distress Oxide Spray. And we found out in previous weeks that this spray comes on as a phantom. Can't see it when we wipe it off, but still it leaves a little color behind, a little, I think it's like a brown yellow. Well, we'll see it. So then I decided to put some mica spray, and this is also distressed spray. It's antiqued bronze, and because I want some of that bronze look to be left in the crevices of the embossed edges, and this is just to make it, you know, a little more antique-y looking. So here it is. You could see that the speckled egg has left a little bit of color behind. Some of that yellowish brownish that you see, that's part of the speckled egg. And then the highlights that you see at the edges of it, it's from the mica spray. So very nice. I really like how it came out. It looks very pretty. Okay, now I'm going to be switching over to the regular embossing folder here. Exactly same process. First with the speckled egg, then with the mica spray. Clean it off. And you see the results are very similar to the 3D embossing folder. This is why I say that you don't necessarily have to have the 3D embossing folder. It is very pretty though, I gotta say. Here they are side by side. So you can really truly compare each of them. As I said, the effect that we're looking for, which is that raised area, gives the same effect, which is a different texture to our projects. And my apologies, I totally didn't hit record when I was altering this piece, and all I did was get a brush and get a little bit of Peacock Feathers, that Oxide Distress ink, and just tap some of the spots here on the card, and just to bring out a little bit more of that minty teal color that I love so much. And then I went over the raised areas with a gold ink pad. I think that the combination of these colors just is beautiful. It really came out precious. I really like it. Here's a closer look at the piece, and yes, I am quite content with it. Very beautiful. Alright, the embellishment that I'm going to be making for this card is a butterfly, and I'm going to be using this metal die that I just recently purchased. It's by Momenta, and I go ahead and I cut out the solid piece out of photo paper. I add a little bit of water to some Pumice Stone and Speckled Egg, and then I brush it on this solid piece of photo paper. And again, as I did with the base of the card, I bring in some Peacock Feathers, add a little bit of water, and brush it on the butterfly. And by doing this, I'm just trying to mimic what I did with the embossed piece. Give it kind of like the same tones of color. And of course, going around the edges and just trying to cover everything and cleaning it as I go. Using a leftover piece of photo paper, I go ahead and I brush on some Peacock Feathers because I want to cut the body of the butterfly out of this piece. I cut out the top part of the butterfly in this pretty gold paper. Then I went ahead and I stuck the body of the butterfly on top of it. And this will be the top layer of my butterfly. Adding some multimedia glue, because this is photo paper, I go ahead and I stick both of these layers together. I glued the embossed layer onto my card base. And my card base is this pretty gold paper, the same one that I cut the butterfly out of. I decided that the bottom wings needed more gold to them. So I went ahead and with the same ink pad that I used on the embossed piece, I went around the edges of the bottom butterfly wings. And I liked the finishing touch that gave it. Just brought it all together. Using again some multimedia glue, I go ahead and I place the butterfly on top of the middle of my card, more towards the top of the card, because I will be placing the sentiment beneath it. And for my sentiment, I went ahead and I heat embossed the sentiment with sympathy using some white embossing powder. I added the whole piece onto some black cardstock, only because I felt that the sentiment being on a black background needed something to balance it. And I felt that adding the bottom layer in black as well would tie it all together, and indeed it did. I added a gold frame to the sentiment and glued it underneath the butterfly. And here is our beautiful card. Yes, unfortunately, I have been needing a lot of condolence cards lately. And just to finish it, as most of the time, I bring on some corners. A 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. And all right, here it is. That is my finished card. I think it came out beautiful. I don't know, maybe because these are my colors. I don't know, I just really love that teal color. So here is my card. Okay, now continuing on with the other embossed piece, the one with the regular embossing folder, I want to use some of this paper that I created, just brushing on some coffee. And I'll put a link up here for you to show you how I made it. I actually uploaded a video about a year ago on how to make this paper and different looks that you could achieve from brushing on coffee onto paper. Depends on the paper. Anyways, the link is there for you to view it if you wish to. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and use this paper for this card. I think the color combination is going to look beautiful, really. I just think that there's something about brown, light blue, and white that just pair up beautifully. So that's what I'm going to do. So I go ahead and I cut my pieces of paper just about the size of my card front. And I take this fancy metal die and I cut it out of the brown cardstock. Just like that. I must say that investing in one of these little tools, these little brushes, I thought at the beginning that it was going to be a waste of money. And then they became on clearance, something like that. And I purchased one and it does help. It helps when you have really intricate dies like this to help you clean out all the little pieces. It just makes it quicker. It's definitely not a must-have tool, but it's a tool that is one of those that is nice to have. Okay, so I also went ahead and I die cut some of these corners that come with this die. Very fancy smashy. And just with some multimedia glue, I go ahead and I stick these 4 corners down. Undo get. I don't know if I said that correctly, but it was fun to try. Je ne parle pas français. Ah, French, such a beautiful language, so hard to master. All right, back to the card. So once I had the corners stuck down, I didn't like how they looked. They looked like they were floating. So I decided to cut the corners off. So I just went around the bottom part of the die and I snipped away the corners. And yes, that actually worked. Now it looked like this piece was actually grounded. Okay, for my sentiment, I put the sentiment. Thank you for all you do. This is going to be going to a friend that is such a great help to me, and I just really appreciate her. So I hope she appreciates this card. And I don't know if she'll be watching this video, so I'm not going to say who it's for. But anyway, and it actually says, thank you for everything you do. And I just go ahead and I heat emboss this using white embossing powder. So here is something that happened to me that unfortunately I didn't use everything that the Misty has to offer because I placed the tag right in the middle of the Misty. So I couldn't place it back in after noticing that the K was incomplete. So I brought in an embossing pen, which I had not used in a long time. Turns out that the pen was dry, so I couldn't use it. But I needed to complete that loop on the K that I was missing. So here's a tip. I brought in some embossing ink. I dipped this pen in it, and voila! It worked, my dear. It worked. I added more embossing powder, and with my heat tool, I was able to melt the embossing powder for a beautiful sentiment. I go ahead and I bring my card base in, and using regular glue, I go ahead and I stick the first layer on, which is the coffee paper. Next, using some multimedia glue, again because this is photo paper, I go ahead and I stick the embossed layer onto my card base. Just like that. Next, I decide to put the sentiment onto a spongy adhesive. Now, I think that this is perfect for mailing because once it is pressed on, it becomes completely flat. But when you take it out of the envelope, it pops up. So I really like this sponge adhesive. Unfortunately, I can't find any more. I found it at the 99-cent store, but they stopped carrying it for some reason. So if there is a company out there listening, please make these. They are awesome because of that. For mailing, it makes it perfect because they absolutely lay flat. So no extra postage, my friend. But once it's out of the envelope, again, it pops up. I decided to add some multimedia glue to these foam squares, well actually sponge squares, and place the sentiment right in the middle of the card. And I press on it just to set it in, and I decide to add some glue to these two ends of the sentiment. So just adding some glue to the two ends, and I press down on it until the glue sets. This will give this card a different kind of feel. You'll still have the 3D effect as if it's popping out at you, but yet it's well grounded onto the card base. So once I had the card finished, I wanted to add something to it. And I wanted to add something purple because my friend likes the color purple. So I decided to punch out some purple butterflies. I embossed the body of the butterfly in white, glued them on opposite sides of the tag, added a little square of foam adhesive to the bottom of one of the wings, just for some dimension. And here is my finished card. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Oh, so pretty, so pretty, so pretty. So yes, I hope she likes it. I hope she loves it. Okay, I want to share one more card for today, and this is inspired using paper by the Paper Studio. This is a brand that Hobby Lobby carries, and it's this beautiful blue that you see here. This is going to be our inspiration. And I start with the same process as the previous cards because I want to give it that aged look. I take some Speckled Egg, wipe it off, and I add some blues, and I decided to take some Stormy Sky because that's the color that is mostly found on this pattern paper, and I just scribble it all over with the paintbrush, adding a little bit of water, and I'm starting to get that purpley look, which is a little darker, and I'm getting that stormy sky in the crevices. So after playing with it much, this is a result from this piece. Now comparing it to our inspiration piece, it's a little too purpley, it's a little too dark. So I decided to grab some of this mousse from NUVO that I got in my surprise mega box and applied it just to the top of the raised areas of this piece, just with my finger. Just go ahead and rub it on top, and that lightened this piece up quite a bit, and it gave it some metallic shine. It's quite pretty, really, when you see it in real life. You could see here that it did lighten it up quite a bit, and it gave it a special touch and shine. Using photo paper, I went ahead and I cut out a frame because this card, unfortunately, is for someone that passed away, and I want to incorporate his picture on the card, just for it to be more of a keepsake for the family that maybe they could put in their living room or room that they can display. And just by adding ink the same way that I did the bottom layer, I go ahead and I alter this frame. And again, it's a lot of playing with inks, applying and taking off. And then I also add some of the mousse. Die cut the sentiment thinking of you out of this coffee stained cardstock. I actually cut it out 3 times to make it more like chipboard. Made some photo paper hydrangeas, again adding the same kind of ink. I added his picture to the frame, added some twisted jute twine to the back of the frame, and then I went ahead and I glued on the hydrangeas around his picture. I die cut some flourishes and added those as well in back of the hydrangeas. And I added some pearls to the middle of the flowers. And here is another little tip for you. If you guys need a little bit of color when you have pearl or gems, just grab a alcohol marker and you could color these in. I grabbed this piece, added some glue to the back of it, and stuck it onto my card base. I finished it off by adding a little bit of NUVO drops, and this is just to mimic tears, because it's very sad to lose this wonderful person. And here is a close-up of the card. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys get inspired. I hope you create and be happy. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit the notification bell, like, and comment. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. How rude. I was doing it on the wrong side of the paper. No wonder it's not taking anything. Dummy.